Hello everyone, my name's Mighty Meaty. I'm an arms warrior on Azure US, and today I'm just going to be showing the basics of how to really play an arms warrior. I see pretty much on a daily basis in Fight Club there's people asking basic questions about how to play an arms warrior, like what the rotation is and how they should be gearing. So hopefully by explaining some concepts and showing some stuff in action, it should help you better understand what you're really trying to do as an arms warrior. So the first thing to understand about being an arms warrior is that you are not a fury warrior. What I mean by that is you have a much different rotation. As you're playing a fury warrior, your goal is simply to use Bloodthirst and Whirlwind on cooldown, and you just use those as much as possible, and other stuff comes after that. Arms does not work like that. The core of the arms rotation is slam, assuming you are playing a two-hand build. If you're playing kebab, then that's not the subject of this video. But assuming that you are playing a slam build, that is the core ability that you're going to be using, and you fit Mortal Strike and Whirlwind in where you can around them. So what I mean by that is you'll typically hear people talk about the rotation as being auto, slam, Mortal Strike, and then auto, slam, Whirlwind, then auto, slam, Mortal Strike again, because Mortal Strike is now off cooldown. And then for your next swing, Mortal Strike and Whirlwind are both going to be on cooldown, so it's auto, slam, and then a filler ability. For me, this is Demoralizing Shout, 9 times out of 10. I'm Imp Demo Shout spec, so it's my responsibility to keep this up. If you don't need to Demo Shout, then I guess you could like hamstring or something, or refresh your battle shout, but this is really a filler GCD which isn't really going to go much distance towards increasing your total DPS. So I'll show how this works, and I'll also be able to see as soon as I get in combat with something a couple of tidbits that will help you out a lot, a couple of Weakauras that you should be using. So green bar here, this is my swing timer. Gonna need one of these to be able to slam well. You basically can't play the spec well without having a swing timer that you can watch. Also, nice debuff for the next 10 seconds. We'll wait for this to fall off. And I will do the rotation on this bird once we can get in combat with it. And hope that it doesn't die too quickly so that I can show off the rotation. So, auto, once this swing finishes, slam. Now Mortal Strike on this GCD. Slam now, and dead. But you can see how that fits in as the GCD finishes. So let's say I've Mortal Struck now. So I want to slam now, and then Whirlwind. And then as that swing is finishing, you slam again, and then Mortal Strike was coming off cooldown there, so you then Mortal Strike after that GCD is finished. And then after that Mortal Strike, both Mortal Strike and Whirlwind are on cooldown, so you just do something else. And then after your next slam, Mortal Strike is back off cooldown and you start the rotation again. That is the entirety of the rotation for single target. For multi-target, you instead switch to using Whirlwind on cooldown and cleave as much as possible. Obviously you want to use sweeping strikes whenever possible as well, because cleave interacts with sweeping strikes really well. It doubles the amount of cleave hits, and they can all proc Wind Fury, is my understanding, so it basically doubles your chance of getting Wind Fury proc. It's just excellent. So, a couple of things about playing Slam, a couple of things that will really help you out. So, Weakauras. There's 3 different Weakauras that I use for slamming. I've already seen the swing timer itself that I'm using. This is the Slam swing timer with latency, which will show you not only a more accurate swing timer than the actual dedicated weapon swing timer add-on, but it will show you at the end of the bar the amount of latency you have so that you know roughly how much to precast slam by. And what I mean by that is, if we refer to another Weakaura that I have, the slam auto delay, this isn't really necessary for slamming, but it's just very nice information to have on screen. The number that was above the end of my swing timer, that's the slam auto delay, and it shows you how late your last slam was, like how much it was delayed by, how much earlier you could have done it without clipping your swing. Because the important thing to understand about slamming is that while you're waiting for your swing timer to elapse, you don't want to do a slam before you swing, because once you slam, it resets the swing timer, so then you need to wait another 3.5 seconds or however long your swing time is before you actually get an auto attack off. And third Weakauras that I use is slam, slam, slam. This was the audio ping that you were hearing. It just shows a very brief video and audio ping for when you are able to slam, just to help you like build up a bit of rhythm. The sound on it is customizable, so I changed it to a sonar ping. I think it's relatively non-intrusive. So I'll show this a bit again. So as my swing timer is going to lapse, you're going to hear the ping. So like when you hear, that's when you can slam. So for instance, let's do this slam too early. Or I tried to do it early, but I've got a lot of latency, so we'll do this on. I'll go real early on this next enemy on my next swing. So my slam was too early, and I had a delay of 3 seconds. So the auto swing that I was aiming to do it on simply did not occur. I lost a whole swing's worth of damage there. And you just want to try and get in the habit of timing it so that the delay is as low as possible. Like a 0.7. I waited less than a tenth of a second there to do that one. Let's try a couple more times on this enemy. 18. 15. If you are like perfectly optimal, you can get a minus figure, which means you actually precasted the slam. But if you are getting those, it's not necessarily luck, but you certainly shouldn't be aiming to precast every slam because you will end up clipping the auto attacks, which is the worst case scenario. Let's even do the full rotation once again here. I mean, yeah, the enemies are just going to die too quickly because you crit really big while you're slamming. But yeah, that's the basics of how to do the actual rotation. As far as gearing goes, there isn't too much difference than Fury. You still want to have your big strength pieces, you still want armor pen if you are able to get it. I do think that expertise has a higher rating as arms than it does as Fury, simply because not connecting with a swing can be so punishing. If you get a dodge, you do have the option of using overpower, but I would not use overpower except in the case of you have just gotten into combat and you miss, like your first swing is a dodge and you have just enough rage to use overpower. In that case, yes, I would use overpower, but if you're just in the middle of your rotation and you're swimming in rage, I do not think it is worth dumping your rage bar to use an overpower. And then you've got to go back over to berserker stance. So even if you have it macroed, it's like a little awkward to deal with. The main difference between Arms and Fury as far as the gearing goes is really the gemming choice, I'd say. I think there's a much better case to be made for gemming strength when you are Fury, but as Arms, you pretty much just want to gem straight crit, because like you are there to land critical hits and deal a lot more damage and get a lot more rage when you deal crits, and rage is something that you will from time to time struggle with if you say don't have access to a Wind Fury totem. So having expertise to minimize the chance that your attacks will be dodged, and then maximizing the amount of crit you've got so that you can get some big crits, and then it increases your flurry uptime as well. And having flurry uptime is what is going to make the rotation feel smooth. If you don't have flurry up, then you will be waiting between swings to be able to slam, whereas you'll find that you're like in raid and you have flurry up. Once you get Bloodlust going, if anything, you are in danger of not being able to do the rotation fast enough. Like, at the correct haste value, you can just do each ability as a GCD comes up, and the rotation just works beautifully with little delay. Once you add a DST proc in there, then there's an argument to be made for stopping using Slam and instead just queuing Heroic Strike when you have a lot of rage, and then using Mortal Strike and Whirlwind on cooldown. That's probably when your swing speed is 2 seconds or faster than 2 seconds. If you're spending like more than half a second of delay on a slam simply because your swing speed is too fast, that is the point when you should abandon slamming and instead use Mortal Strike and Whirlwind on cooldown. But once you go back to having about a 2.5 swing speed, that is the sweet spot range for being able to just do the fluid rotation, each ability as the GCD comes up, and the rotation will just work and the delay will be very low. So that's really the basics, and there's lots of guides on the internet if you want to see more details about slamming. Not all of them are correct, but there's a lot of guides out there. Fight Club is obviously a big resource, so hopefully this helps some of you out, and yeah, Islamic.